My name is Olivia Foster. I'm 70 years old, and last Easter Sunday my daughter-in-law threw a crystal wine glass at my face, cutting me to the bone. As blood ran down my white shirt, my son William screamed, "You're being selfish, Mom!" I just smiled, drove myself to the emergency room, and texted my lawyer. Phase 1 was complete. What they didn't know was that I had been waiting for them to make this exact mistake for 6 months. Every word, every threat, every greedy glance, all of it caught on camera. Before I tell you how I set the trap, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And please like and subscribe if you believe that respect is earned, not given. The trap was actually set the Wednesday before Easter. I was sitting in my home office, the one my neighbors thought was just a spare room where I kept Robert's old things. They imagined me spending my days tending roses in the garden, maybe watching game shows, doing crossword puzzles. The harmless routine of a 70-year-old widow. They had no idea what I really did in that room. I was reviewing quarterly reports from an offshore trust fund when my phone rang. The screen lit up with my son's name, William Foster. I put the call on speaker and continued typing. My fingers moved across the keyboard with the same precision they'd had for 40 years as a senior financial crimes investigator. Some skills you never lose. "Mom, hey Mom, you there?" His voice was thin, strained. It was the kind of anxiety a man gets when he's desperate and trying not to show it. "William," I kept my voice warm, grandmotherly. "What a lovely surprise. How are you, sweetheart?" "I'm good, Mom. Really good. Look, I know this is last minute, but Easter is this Sunday. Sophia and I were thinking maybe we could have dinner at your place." My fingers stopped moving. I leaned back in Robert's old leather chair, the one that still smelled faintly of his cologne, even after 3 years. The one I sometimes sat in late at night when the loneliness became too heavy. "My house," I said carefully. "Of all places." Sophia hated this house. She'd told William it was a haunted museum, full of depressing old furniture. In the last year, she'd visited exactly twice. Both times she'd acted like the antique chairs might give her a disease. This wasn't a family invitation. This was a chess move. "Yeah, your place," William said. He tried to laugh, but it came out nervous and high-pitched. "Come on, Mom. It's Easter. We just want to spend it with you. And well, Sophia's parents are in town, Thomas and Patricia. They'd love to see you too." There it was, the other piece of the puzzle. Thomas and Patricia Morrison. 2 people who had perfected the art of living well on other people's money. My private investigator had sent me their file last month. Fraudulent bankruptcy in Florida. Assets hidden in offshore accounts. A trail of unpaid debts stretching back 15 years. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart," I said, making my voice shake just a little. "I'd be honored to host everyone. You know this house is always open to family." "Great, Mom, thanks. We'll be there around 6 on Sunday." He hung up quickly. Too quickly. I sat in the silence of my office looking at the photograph on my desk. Robert and me on our 30th anniversary standing in front of this very house. His arm around my waist. My head on his shoulder. Both of us smiling like we'd won the lottery. "They're coming for the house, Robert," I whispered to the photo. Just like we predicted. I picked up my secure line, the one William didn't know about, and dialed. Ben Carter answered on the first ring. "Olivia, I was wondering when you'd call." "The Easter invitation," I said. "You're getting predictable in your old age, William." Ben's voice was dry with amusement. "Let me guess. He's bringing the in-laws, Thomas and Patricia Morrison, the whole crew." Ben sighed. It was the sigh of a man who'd been my lawyer and friend for 35 years, who'd watched me dismantle corporate fraud rings and financial conspiracies, who knew exactly what I was capable of. "Olivia, are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? We have evidence. We could shut them down right now. I've got proof of Sophia's embezzlement. We've got records of William's gambling debts. We could—" "No!" My voice was firm. "If I just cut them off, they'll play the victims. They'll tell everyone I'm a cruel old woman who abandoned her only son. No, Ben. I need them to show me who they really are. I need them to make the first move." I had learned one critical lesson in 40 years of investigating white-collar criminals. Desperate people always overplay their hand. "The Emily Foster Trust is still locked down?" I asked. I'd named it after Robert's mother, a little private joke only Ben and I understood. "Tighter than Fort Knox," Ben assured me. "They can't touch a penny of your real assets. As far as William knows, all you have is the house and your pension. Good. And the surveillance. The cameras in the living room, dining room, and office are active. High-definition pinhole lenses. The microphones are live. Everything's being recorded to a secure cloud server just like you requested. I took a deep breath. Ben, there's something I need to tell you. Something I did a month ago. Oh, God, what did you do, Olivia? I paid off William's debt. The entire $250,000 he owes to that loan shark in Miami, anonymously, gave him a clean slate. There was dead silence on the other end. Olivia, Ben finally said, his voice careful. Why would you do that? Because I wanted to see what he would do. My throat tightened. Would he come to me, confess, ask for help to rebuild his life? Or would he see it as a lucky break and come for more? And now he's coming for your house, Ben said quietly. Now he's coming for the house, I confirmed. He didn't just fail the test, Ben. He's trying to burn down the whole school. I looked at Robert's photo again, at his kind eyes, at the smile that had gotten me through 40 years of seeing the worst of human nature. I have to know, Ben. I have to know if my son is truly lost, or if there's still something worth saving. And if he's lost, I closed my eyes. Then I'll do what I've always done. I'll make sure justice is served. For the next 3 days, I played my part perfectly. I went to the grocery store and bought a 20-pound turkey. I picked out potatoes, fresh green beans, and all the ingredients for Robert's favorite apple pie, the one with the lattice crust he used to say looked like edible artwork. I even called Sophia to ask what wine her parents preferred. Oh, Olivia, her voice dripped with fake sweetness. That's so thoughtful of you. But don't worry about it. We'll bring the wine. We want this to be a perfect evening. I could hear the hidden meaning in every word. Our perfect evening. Our new beginning. In my house. That's very generous of you, dear, I said, making my voice quaver slightly. I just want everyone to be comfortable. After I hung up, I walked through my house, really looked at it. The Victorian that Robert and I had bought 43 years ago when it was practically falling apart. We'd spent weekends stripping wallpaper, refinishing floors, replacing every creaky board. This house wasn't just wood and plaster. It was Robert's laugh echoing in the kitchen while he burned toast. It was William's baby photos on the mantel. It was every Christmas morning, every birthday cake, every quiet evening reading by the fireplace. I walked into the master bedroom, our bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed. Robert's reading glasses were still on his nightstand. 3 years gone, and I couldn't bring myself to move them. I'm scared, Robert, I whispered to the empty room. My hands were shaking. I'm scared I've already lost our boy. I'm scared that the test I'm about to give him will prove something I don't want to know. The house settled around me with familiar creaks. For a moment, I let myself be weak, let myself cry, let the grief I usually kept locked away come flooding out. But only for a moment, because I had work to do. Sunday morning, I woke at 5 a.m. My hands were steadier now. The grief was still there. It was always there. But I'd tucked it back into its corner of my heart. I spent the morning in the garden, tending the roses Robert had planted our first year in the house. My knees ached as I knelt in the soil. My back protested when I stood. 70 years old, and my body reminded me of it every single day. But my mind was as sharp as it had ever been. At 3 p.m., I started cooking. I basted the turkey every 20 minutes, just like Robert had taught me. I made his mother's mashed potatoes, the ones with real butter and heavy cream, the kind that would probably stop my heart if I ate too much. At 5 p.m., I checked the systems one last time. I pulled up the app on my phone, the one that looked like a weather widget but was actually connected to every camera in the house. 6 green lights, all systems active. I slipped the special pen into my shirt pocket. It wasn't just a pen, it was a high-fidelity audio recorder that Ben had given me. For emergencies, he'd said. Every emergency today would be documented. At 5:45, I put on my best dress, the navy blue one with the pearl buttons that Robert had always loved. I applied lipstick with shaking hands, not from fear, from anticipation. I was ready. At exactly 6 p.m., I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway. I walked to the front window and peeked through the curtain. A brand new BMW sat gleaming in my driveway, midnight blue with temporary dealer plates. William and Sophia couldn't afford that car. They couldn't afford the payments on their apartment, let alone a $60,000 vehicle. But there it was. I shuffled to the door, deliberately moving slower than I needed to, hunching my shoulders just a little. I was 70 years old. I was supposed to shuffle. I opened the door with a wide, welcoming smile. "William, Sophia, oh, you're here?" William looked pale, thinner than the last time I'd seen him. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he wouldn't quite meet my gaze. Sophia, on the other hand, looked radiant. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves. Her dress was silk, probably designer, the kind that cost $2,000. Behind them stood Thomas and Patricia Morrison. Thomas was a big man, broad-shouldered with silver hair and the kind of tan that came from country clubs. He wore a suit that screamed new money, the kind of suit men wear when they're trying to convince everyone they've still got it. Patricia was thin, expensively thin, with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes. Her jewelry caught the evening light. Diamonds on her ears, diamonds on her fingers, diamonds that my investigator had confirmed were fake. They walked past me without a greeting. Patricia's eyes immediately scanned the entryway, lingering on the antique mirror, the Persian rug, the chandelier Robert and I had found at an estate sale in Boston. "This foyer is darker than I remember," Patricia said, wrinkling her nose. "We'll need to repaint everything, something lighter, maybe a cream color." "The walls are solid, though," Thomas added, rapping his knuckles against the plaster. "Good bones. We can work with this." They were already redecorating. They hadn't even said hello, and they were already planning how to change my home. William finally looked at me. "Hey, Mom. Thanks for having us." "Nonsense, sweetheart." I reached up and patted his cheek. He flinched slightly. Come in. Dinner's almost ready." We gathered in the dining room, the room where Robert and I had hosted 43 Easter dinners. The table we'd bought at a flea market and refinished ourselves in our garage. The china that had been his grandmother's. I'd set everything perfectly. Candles, flowers, the good silver. Sophia picked up her heavy fork and examined it like she was evaluating its worth. "Olivia, this turkey looks lovely," she said. Her voice had that particular tone, the one that meant the opposite of what she was saying. "So traditional. Translation simple. Boring. Peasant food. I'd spent all morning preparing that turkey, brining it overnight, basting it until my arm ached, making sure it was perfect." "Thank you, dear," I said softly. "I hope everyone enjoys it." Thomas swirled the wine in his glass, the expensive Cabernet that Sophia had insisted on bringing. "Interesting aroma," he announced like he was judging a competition. "Bit heavy on the tannins for my taste, but acceptable." I smiled. "Oh, I don't know much about those things, Thomas. I just know what tastes good." They exchanged that look, the one I'd seen 100 times in my career, the look that said, "She's a simpleton. She's harmless. She's easy prey. Good." That's exactly what I wanted them to think. The pinhole camera in the corner was recording in crystal clear high definition. The microphone in my pocket was capturing every word, every tone, every condescending sigh. Patricia took one delicate bite of turkey and set down her fork. "Olivia," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy, "this house really is lovely." "Thank you, Patricia." "But," she paused, looking around with exaggerated concern, "it's just so much house for one person. All these empty rooms, the upkeep. It must be such a terrible burden for you. All alone." There it was, the first probe. I let my shoulders slump slightly, let my voice waver. "Oh, I manage. A little dusting here and there. It keeps me active." I didn't mention the professional cleaning service that came every Tuesday, the one paid for by the private trust that my family knew nothing about. Sophia saw the opening and pounced. She placed her hand on her mother's, a perfect picture of filial devotion. "Mom's just worried about you, Olivia. We all are, especially after after what they just went through." I turned to Patricia, widening my eyes with concern. "Oh, is everything all right?" Patricia's face contorted into practiced sadness. "It's just, we had some terrible luck in Florida. The business. We lost everything." Lost everything. That's what she called it. My investigator's report had been quite clear: fraudulent bankruptcy, hidden assets, a 15-year pattern of living beyond their means and leaving others to pay for it. "We just need a place to restart, Olivia," Thomas said, his voice heavy with false humility. "A place to get back on our feet. Rebuild. A place to restart. In my house. Using my assets." I looked at William, my son, my only child. He'd been silent the entire meal, pushing mashed potatoes around his plate. His face was pale. His hands trembled slightly. He knew what was coming. He was the battering ram they'd chosen, the weak link they were going to use to break down my defenses. Sophia turned to him, her voice suddenly sharp. "William, honey, aren't you going to ask your mother?" William swallowed hard, put down his fork, stared at the gravy boat like it held the secrets of the universe. "Mom," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were talking and, well, Thomas and Patricia, they need a place to stay, just for a little while. And since you have all this space," he trailed off, couldn't finish the sentence. I waited, didn't help him, let him twist in the wind. The silence stretched out. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. Each second was another opportunity for my son to do the right thing. "We were hoping," he finally choked out, "that they could move in here. Just temporarily, Mom. Just until they get back on their feet." Temporarily. The word of a coward. The lie you tell yourself so you can sleep at night. I let my face show confusion. "Move in here, Thomas and Patricia." Sophia's patience snapped like a dry twig. She slammed her hand on the table. The silverware jumped. "No, William. Stop sugarcoating it." She turned to me, her face transforming from fake sympathy to cold efficiency. "Olivia, they're moving in permanently." The room went absolutely silent. The only sound was the ticking of that grandfather clock, the one Robert had inherited from his mother, the one that had marked time in this house for 43 years, permanently. William flinched like Sophia had slapped him. Thomas and Patricia just watched me, their faces hard and expectant. The masks were off. This was the demand. I let myself stammer. I don't understand. Permanently." "Yes." Sophia's voice was clipped. "It makes perfect sense. They're family. And frankly, you shouldn't be alone in this big house anyway. It's not safe." She leaned forward and I saw the predator behind the pretty face. "You're 70 years old, Olivia. You forget things. You could fall. What if something happened and no one found you for days?" There it was. The groundwork for incompetency. This was exactly what Ben and I had predicted 6 months ago. She was building the narrative. The confused old woman who couldn't take care of herself. Sophia continued, taking a breath like she was about to deliver good news. "William and I have decided. We're all going to move in. Thomas and Patricia will take the 2 upstairs guest rooms, and William and I will move into the master suite. With you." My blood went cold. The master suite. Robert's room. The room where he'd taken his last breath while I held his hand. The room that still smelled faintly of his aftershave. "It's for the best," Sophia said, her voice softening into a grotesque imitation of kindness. "That way we can manage things for you." "Manage things?" I repeated. "Yes." She waved her hand dismissively. "The bills, the investments, the house maintenance. You're getting to that age, Olivia. You shouldn't have to worry about your finances anymore." And there it was, the kill shot. They weren't just coming for my house. They were coming for my name, my signature, my bank accounts, my entire life. I looked at William, really looked at him. This was the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the boy who'd cried in my arms when his first girlfriend broke his heart, the boy I'd stayed up all night with when he had pneumonia at age 8. And he was sitting there silent, letting his wife and her bankrupt criminal parents stage a hostile takeover of his mother's life. The microphone in my pen captured every syllable. The camera in the corner captured every greedy expression on their faces, every ounce of my son's pathetic cowardice. This was even better than I'd imagined. I heard Patricia's words echo in my mind. Manage your finances. The arrogance of it hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I thought of Robert, of our 50 years together, of building this life brick by brick, penny by penny, of him in the garden with his roses, of him at this very table laughing at one of my terrible jokes. This house wasn't just wood and plaster. It was a testament to everything we'd built together. It was the only physical thing I had left of him, and they wanted to take it. They wanted to sleep in his bed, use his bathroom, erase him from his own home. A cold rage settled over me, not the hot rage of an argument, the cold, precise fury of an investigator who'd just found the final piece of evidence. I placed my knife and fork carefully on my plate. The soft clink was deafening in the sudden silence. I looked up and met Sophia's eyes. I let the confused old woman mask slip away. Let her see the woman I really was, the woman who'd spent 40 years dismantling fraud rings and bringing down corporate criminals. No, I said. The word was quiet, calm, a statement of fact. Sophia's triumphant smile froze, cracked. What did you just say? Thomas and Patricia looked at each other confused. The script wasn't going according to plan. I said no. My voice was steady now, cold as winter morning. This is my house. This is Robert's house. Your parents, Sophia, are not moving in here. You are not moving in here. And you are certainly not managing my finances. For exactly 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then William shot to his feet so fast his chair nearly toppled over. His face, which had been pale with cowardice, was now a deep, blotchy red of shame and rage. "You're being selfish!" he screamed. The words hit me like a physical blow. Selfish. Me. The woman who'd quietly paid off his $250,000 gambling debt just last month. The woman who'd funded his failed startup 5 years ago with money I never expected back. The woman who'd raised him, loved him, given him every advantage I could. I was the one being selfish. Before I could respond, Sophia was on her feet too. Her face was a mask of pure, unfiltered rage. The loving daughter-in-law facade was gone. This was the real woman, the predator. "Selfish!" she shrieked, her voice echoing off the walls. "You're sitting in this museum all alone. You have 3 bedrooms upstairs, 3, and you only use 1. Those rooms are not empty," I said, my voice rising to meet hers. "One of them was my son's room, the son I used to know. The other 2 belong to Robert, his study, his workshop. They're full of him, and you will never set foot in them." "We are his family now," Patricia chimed in from the table. "You owe him this. We need a place to live." I turned to her, letting every ounce of my professional investigator's voice come through. "Then you should have thought of that before you committed fraud in Florida." Her face went white. She hadn't expected me to know. How dare you?" Thomas sputtered, standing up. "Sit down, Thomas," I said. And to my surprise, to everyone's surprise, he did. Bullies are always cowards at heart. I stood slowly, placing my napkin on the table. "This dinner is over. I want all of you out of my house. Now." William's eyes were desperate, pleading. "Mom, wait. Please. You don't understand. We need this. You have to help us." "Help you?" I asked quietly. "Help you steal my home. Help you have me declared incompetent, which was your next step. Help you forge documents to take control of my assets." His face collapsed. All the blood drained from it. "I know the plan, William," I said. "I've known it for 6 months." Sophia was not done. She was trapped. A cornered animal. And cornered animals are the most dangerous. "You can't prove any of that, you old fool," she screamed. "It's our word against yours. Who are they going to believe? A loving family concerned about an elderly woman, or a confused, selfish, senile old lady who's clearly a danger to herself?" "We'll see," I said, turning my back on them. I took 1 step toward the kitchen, toward the phone, toward calling the police. I never made it to the 2nd step. Behind me, I heard something that wasn't quite human, a guttural scream of pure, cornered rage. "You can't turn your back on me." I turned around, not fast enough to dodge, but just in time to see it. The crystal wine glass, the one Thomas had been critiquing earlier, was in Sophia's hand. Dark red Cabernet sloshed inside it. Her face was twisted beyond recognition. She wasn't the sophisticated woman anymore. She was a wild animal. "You old fool!" she screamed again. And then she threw it. Her arms snapped forward. The glass tumbled end over end through the air. The red liquid caught the light from the chandelier. And in that split second, I made a choice. I could have dodged. I'm 70, but I'm not slow. I saw it coming. But I didn't move. I needed this. For the evidence. For the proof that they were dangerous, not concerned. That I was the victim, not the confused old woman they were trying to paint me as. The glass hit my face with shocking force. The crystal, beautiful and expensive, exploded against my right cheekbone. I felt a sharp electric pain as shards cut into my skin. My glasses flew off my face, clattering somewhere across the room. Then came the wine, cold and stinging, splashing into my eyes, down my white shirt. And immediately after, hot blood. The sharp edge of the glass had caught me high on the cheekbone, just under my eye. It wasn't a scratch. It was deep. I could feel the blood welling up instantly hot and thick, tracing a path down my face. The room went utterly silent. Drip, drip, drip. My blood on Robert's refinished hardwood floor. I didn't move, didn't even blink. I just looked at them. Sophia stood frozen. Her arms still raised, her mouth open in a perfect O of shock. She hadn't expected to actually hit me. Or maybe she hadn't expected me to just stand there and take it. Thomas and Patricia were statues. They weren't rushing to help. They were calculating, trying to figure out how this new variable fit into their plan. It didn't. And William, my son, he was pressed against the far wall, his hands over his mouth, his eyes wide with useless terror. He said nothing, did nothing, just watched his mother bleed. In that moment, any last hope I'd been holding on to, any tiny ember of belief that maybe, just maybe, there was still something worth saving in my son, died. It turned to ash and blew away. My cheek was throbbing. The wine stung the open wound. I slowly raised my hand to my shirt pocket and retrieved the white linen napkin I'd placed there. I pressed it gently against my cheek. The fabric turned dark crimson almost instantly. And then, looking directly into Sophia's terrified eyes, I smiled. It was a small smile, just a slight lift at the corners of my mouth. But it was the most terrifying smile I've ever produced. It was the smile of someone who had just watched their prey impale itself on its own stupidity. Sophia's face crumpled. She finally understood. She didn't know how she'd lost, but she knew the game was over. "Thank you, Sophia," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "You just made this so much easier for me." Her knees buckled. She grabbed the back of the chair to stay upright. What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I turned to William, who was still pressed against the wall. "William," I said. He flinched. "I hope this was all worth it." I walked past the shattered glass and the puddles of wine on Robert's floor. I picked up my car keys from the entry table. "Mom, wait." William's voice was a pathetic squeak. "Where are you going? We can clean this up. We can talk." I opened the front door. The cool evening air felt good against my throbbing face. "I'm going to the emergency room, son," I said, not looking back. "I'll need a medical report. For the police. You understand?" I stepped out onto the porch. But you can't," Sophia screamed from inside. "We'll say you fell. We'll say you're crazy." I paused at the top of the steps and looked back through the open door. They were all huddled together now, a pathetic tableau of defeated predators. "You can say whatever you want," I called out to them. "But the cameras in that dining room don't lie, and they've been recording this entire lovely Easter dinner." I didn't wait to see their faces. I walked down the steps, got into my car, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway. In my rearview mirror, I could see them all frozen in the doorway, backlit by the warm light of my home. The home that would never ever be theirs. I didn't run red lights or race through yellow signals. I drove my 10-year-old sedan exactly at the speed limit, signaling for a full 3 seconds before each turn. The blood was a problem, though. The linen napkin I was pressing against my cheek was already soaked through. I could feel the cold, sticky wetness seeping between my fingers, dripping onto my good dress, onto the steering wheel. At a red light, I flipped down the visor mirror. The wound was worse than I'd thought. A jagged 3-inch gash starting just below my right eye and running down my cheekbone. Deep, bleeding profusely. For just a moment, just one moment, I let myself feel it. The pain, the betrayal, the crushing weight of what had just happened. My son had watched his wife assault me, had watched me bleed, and had done nothing. My hands started shaking on the steering wheel, not from the injury, from the grief. "Robert," I whispered to the empty car, "our boy is gone. He's really gone." The light turned green. A car honked behind me. I took a deep breath, pushed the grief back down into that corner of my heart, where I kept all the things that would break me if I looked at them too long, and drove. A panicked person would have called 911 from the house. A victim would be hysterical, speeding to the hospital, laying on the horn. But I wasn't a victim. I was an investigator. And I was on my way to file Exhibit A. St. Jude's emergency room was quiet for a Sunday evening. I pulled into the ambulance bay, parked neatly between the painted lines, turned off the car, and walked calmly through the automatic doors. The triage nurse, a young woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders, looked up from her computer screen. Her eyes went wide. "Oh my God! Ma'am, what happened? Did you fall?" She rushed toward me with a wheelchair. I held up my free hand, the one not pressing the bloody napkin to my face. "I did not fall, and I'm fine to walk, thank you." I stood in front of her desk, deliberately positioning myself under the bright fluorescent lights. This was important. This was the first report. the foundation of everything that would come after. My name, I said, my voice clear and steady, is Olivia Foster. My date of birth is October 19th, 1955. At approximately 6:45 p.m. this evening at my primary residence, my daughter-in-law Sophia Foster assaulted me. She threw a crystal wine glass at my face. I paused, making sure she was writing everything down. I am here to be treated, and I need you to notify hospital security. I wish to file a report. The nurse's face changed. The pity was gone, replaced by professional shock, and something else, respect maybe. Or recognition. This wasn't a confused elderly woman who'd had an accident. This was a crime scene. Of course, Mrs. Foster. Right away. She buzzed me through the doors while simultaneously picking up the phone to page security and the on-call doctor. The chain of custody had begun. I was taken to a private examination room. Within minutes, a young resident rushed in, his eyes widening at the sight of my face. Mrs. Foster, I'm Dr. James Whitmore. Let's get you cleaned up and see what we're dealing with here. He reached toward me with a sterile wipe. I leaned back out of his reach. Before you touch me, doctor. He froze, confused. Ma'am, you're bleeding. I understand that. But before you clean, stitch, or treat this wound in any way, I need photographs. High-resolution photographs. Document the laceration exactly as it is right now. I also need you to document my clothing. Dr. Whitmore looked at the nurse, who nodded. He understood immediately. Of course. Assault protocol. He turned to the nurse. Get the forensic camera kit. Document wound angle depth and note any potential glass fragments. Photograph her clothing for the wine splatter pattern. The nurse disappeared and returned with a professional camera. Flash, flash, flash. For the next 5 minutes, I sat perfectly still under the harsh lights as they photographed me from every angle. Each flash was another lock clicking shut on the cage I was building for Sophia. This is what you can't argue with, I thought. This is what a high-priced lawyer can't spin. A photograph of a 70-year-old woman bleeding from a facial wound in her own home. Finally, Dr. Whitmore began to clean the wound. The antiseptic stung a sharp, cleansing fire that made my eyes water. This is deep, Mrs. Foster, he murmured, probing gently with gloved fingers. It's gone right to the bone. You're lucky it missed your eye by about an inch. You're going to need stitches. At least 4, maybe 5. Whatever you think is necessary, doctor. My voice was calm, professional. I don't need it to be pretty. I just need it documented. As he worked threading the needle with practiced precision, I thought about William. My son. My weak, pathetic son. I had known about his problems for 6 months. The gambling debt that had ballooned to $250,000. The late-night calls from Miami with veiled threats. The way he'd started drinking more, sleeping less, looking over his shoulder. And I had known about Sophia's embezzlement. $20,000 in the first quarter alone taken from her employer's accounts. Small amounts at first, then getting bolder. More careless. I'd even known about her meeting with Dr. Harold Pierce last month, a disgraced physician who specialized in elder competency evaluations. For the right price, he'd declare anyone mentally unfit. They hadn't been planning to ask me for help. They'd been planning to take everything. The assault tonight wasn't part of their plan. It was a mistake. A glorious, stupid, impulsive mistake born of pure rage when their plan started falling apart. All right, Dr. Whitmore said, snipping the last thread. 4 stitches. You're done. I looked at my reflection in the mirror he held up. 4 black stitches marched across my cheekbone like angry ants. The skin around them was already purpling with bruises. Perfect. Thank you, doctor. Now I need 2 things from you. He paused in his cleanup. What's that? First, I need a complete detailed copy of my medical report. Time of arrival, my exact statement about the assault, and your professional medical opinion that the wound is consistent with being struck by a heavy crystal object. He nodded slowly. That's all standard for assault documentation. I can provide that. Second, I need a fully itemized bill for this visit. The nurse looked up from her computer. Mrs. Foster, your Medicare and supplemental insurance will cover all of this. I am not using insurance, I stated clearly. I am paying for this entire visit out of pocket right now. I want a paper trail. I want a receipt showing that I, Olivia Foster, personally paid for the medical treatment of injuries inflicted upon me by Sophia Foster. They exchanged glances, but nodded. It took another 20 minutes to process the paperwork. I waited patiently, my hand resting on my purse where my checkbook waited. The bill came to $847. I wrote the check in my careful handwriting, watching the nurse stamp it, paid in full in aggressive red ink. I tucked the receipt and medical report into a large manila envelope. Exhibit A was complete. As I walked out of the examination room, I saw 2 police officers talking to the nurse at the main desk. One was older, late 50s, with a gray mustache and the weary eyes of someone who'd seen too much. His badge read Detective R. Miller. The other was younger, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Detective S. Walsh. Standing with them was Ben Carter. My lawyer looked exactly like he always did, 3-piece suit, understated tie-leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. But his face when he saw me showed something I rarely saw from Ben. Genuine shock. "Olivia." He crossed the room quickly. His eyes scanned my face, taking in the stitches, the bruising already forming. "My God. Are you all right?" "I'm perfect, Ben." I patted the envelope in my hand. Phase 1 is complete. Detective Miller approached, pulling out a notebook. "Mrs. Foster, I'm Detective Raymond Miller, and this is my partner, Detective Sarah Walsh. The hospital reported an assault. Can you tell us what happened?" I could have been dramatic. Could have cried, trembled, played the terrified victim. But that wasn't the role I needed to play right now. "May we sit down?" I asked. "It's been a rather long evening." They led me to a quiet consultation room. Ben sat beside me, his briefcase open on his lap, ready to take notes. At approximately 6:00 p.m. this evening, I began, my voice steady. I hosted Easter dinner at my home for my son William Foster, his wife Sophia Foster, and her parents Thomas and Patricia Morrison. I recounted the evening with the precision of someone who'd spent 40 years giving depositions and trial testimony. The demand that the Morrisons move in permanently, the claim that they would manage my finances, my refusal. "And then," Detective Walsh prompted gently, "my daughter-in-law became enraged. She screamed that I was selfish. When I turned to leave the room, she threw a full wine-glass crystal approximately 1 pound in weight at my face from a distance of roughly 10 feet. "Did she say anything when she threw it?" Miller asked. "She screamed, 'You can't turn your back on me.'" I touched my stitches gently. "The glass shattered on impact. That's when I drove myself here." "And your son?" Walsh asked. "William, what did he do?" This was the part that hurt, the part I had to push past the grief to say out loud. "Nothing," I said quietly. "He did nothing. He stood against the wall and watched his wife assault his mother. Then he watched me bleed. And he did absolutely nothing." There was a moment of heavy silence. "Mrs. Foster," Miller said carefully, "this is a serious assault. We can go to your house right now and arrest Sophia Foster. Do you wish to press charges?" This was it, the pivot point, the single most important moment of Phase 2. I let my shoulders slump, let my hands tremble slightly, let my voice shake. "Press charges," I whispered as if the concept was foreign. "Against Sophia, my son's wife." "Yes, ma'am," Walsh said gently. "You have every right. We can issue an emergency protective order. Get her out of your house." "No." I shook my head more vigorously now. No, I can't do that. Please, don't you understand she's family?" William would never forgive me. "Mrs. Foster," Miller said, his voice firm but kind. "She could have blinded you. If you don't do this now, you're telling her that what she did was acceptable." "You don't understand." I put my face in my hands, a perfect imitation of a broken, defeated woman. "She's my family. Jason is my son. If I do this, it will destroy him. And where would I go? I live in that house. If I press charges, they'll kick me out. I'm 70 years old. I have nowhere else to go." I had laid it on thick. The poor, terrified, dependent old woman. The very role they'd been trying to force me into for 6 months. Now I wrapped myself in it like armor. Miller and Walsh exchanged a look of pure frustration. They'd seen this before. Classic elder abuse. A victim too frightened, too institutionalized to fight back. "Mrs. Foster," Miller said, his voice hardening with professional concern, "we can't force you to press charges, but you cannot go back to that house tonight. It's not safe. Do you have a friend, a relative who can take you in?" Before I could answer, Ben spoke up. "She does." His voice cut through the room with quiet authority. "Officers, thank you for your time and concern. Mrs. Foster will be staying with me at an undisclosed location until we can ensure her safety. I'll be handling all her communications from this point forward." Miller looked relieved to pass this off to a lawyer. He handed me a pamphlet. "Ma'am, here are resources for victims of domestic violence. Please, for your own sake, read it. Reconsider." His voice dropped. "People like this, they don't stop. They only escalate." "Thank you, officer," I murmured, taking the pamphlet with trembling hands. "Thank you for your kindness." They left and the door clicked shut behind them. The moment it did, I stopped shaking. I straightened my spine. I wiped away the tears that hadn't actually fallen. The weary, terrified old woman vanished. The investigator returned. "Did they buy it?" I asked Ben. He allowed himself a small smile. "Hook, line, and sinker. They think you're a terrified elderly woman too scared to act." "Perfect." I stood up, buttoning my cardigan over my blood-stained dress. By now, Miller has probably called my house to check on the situation. He'll tell them I'm not pressing charges, that I'm in shock and staying with a friend. Ben nodded, picking up his briefcase. "Sophia will think she's won. She'll think you're weak, running scared. She'll think the senile old woman is hiding." I smiled, though it hurt my stitches. And when people like her think they've won, they get sloppy. They get arrogant. They make mistakes. I walked toward the exit, the manila envelope clutched in my hand. "Let's go to the penthouse, Ben. I want to watch them panic." The Four Seasons penthouse suite was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Sleek, modern furniture that Robert would have hated. He always preferred antiques and things with history. A wet bar that Ben kept stocked with expensive scotch that I never drank. This had been my secret operations center for 6 months. The place where I'd reviewed evidence-planned strategy and prepared for this exact night. Ben poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. "Want one?" "No, thank you." I was already at the desk, powering up the monitors. "I need a clear head for this." 6 screens flickered to life, each one showing a different angle of my house. Living room, dining room, front porch, upstairs hallway, my office, and the master bedroom. The cameras I'd had installed were pinhole lenses, completely invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Professional grade, the kind federal investigators use. "Let's see what they're doing," I murmured, adjusting the volume on the audio feed. The dining room camera showed chaos. My blood was still on the floor, a dark stain on Robert's carefully refinished hardwood. Shards of crystal glittered everywhere. The white wine-soaked tablecloth was crumpled on the floor, and in the middle of it all, Sophia was pacing like a caged animal. "She said cameras," Sophia's voice came through crystal clear. "Where are the cameras, William? Did you see any cameras?" William was slumped in a chair, his head in his hands. I don't know. Maybe she was bluffing. Old people bluff all the time." "She went to the emergency room, you idiot." Thomas Morrison's face was purple with rage. "She's talking to police right now. You assaulted her." "Me!" Sophia spun on him. "You were the one who said, 'Get the house, get the money, do whatever it takes. This is your plan.'" "Shut up, all of you." Patricia Morrison's voice was shrill. "Someone's coming. I hear a car." I watched on the porch camera as headlights swept across the front of my house. A police cruiser. Right on schedule. Miller and Walsh got out, walked up to my front door and knocked. William answered, his face pale and sweaty. "Mr. Foster?" Miller asked. "Yes, officer." "Thank God you're here." William's voice was pathetic, whining. "It's my mother. We're so worried about her." "We've already met your mother, sir, at the hospital. She's being treated for a severe facial laceration." Sophia appeared behind William, her eyes red, her hands clasped. She'd been crying or doing a good imitation of it. "Oh, thank God she's safe," Sophia breathed. "Did she tell you what happened?" "She fell. She tripped on the rug while she was holding her wine glass. It was terrible. We tried to help her, but she ran out." The lie was so blatant, so smoothly delivered, I had to give her credit for sheer audacity. "Ma'am," Miller said, his voice flat, "that's not what she told us. She said you threw the glass at her." Sophia's face crumpled into perfectly timed tears. She said what? How could she say that?" She clutched at William's arm. "Officer, you have to understand. She's been so confused lately. She forgets things. She gets angry. She says things that don't make sense." William jumped in, nodding vigorously. "It's true, officer. Mom's been paranoid. She's 70 years old. We've been trying to get her help, but she won't listen. We're her only family, and we just want to take care of her." I watched Detective Walsh's eyes narrow slightly. She didn't believe them, but she was just a patrol officer checking on a welfare call. Your mother refused to press charges, Miller said. She said she was scared, that she was going to stay with a friend. Sophia's face showed a flash of pure triumph before she covered it with more tears. Oh, the poor woman. She must be so confused. Thank you for telling us, officer. We'll try to find her. We just want her to be safe. The officers left. William closed the door, and Sophia's tears stopped instantly. She turned to William, her eyes blazing. She's running. The old fool is running scared. She's not pressing charges because she knows we're right. She knows she can't handle this house anymore. Did you hear what the officer said? William's voice was rising with panic. She's with a friend, with that lawyer probably. Mom doesn't have friends. She has Ben Carter, and he's not just a friend, he's her attack dog. Then we move faster, Sophia snapped. Call Dr. Pierce, now. I leaned closer to the monitor as William pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Dr. Pierce, it's William Foster. We spoke last month about my mother, Olivia. He paused, listening. Yes, it's gotten much worse. She had a complete psychotic break tonight. She got violent, threw a wine glass, cut her own face. I felt Ben move beside me. She's spinning it already. Shh, I said, listening intently. She's missing now, William continued. She's 70 years old, bleeding confused. We're terrified she's going to hurt herself or someone else. We need you to file the paperwork. Emergency psychiatric hold, competency hearing. Whatever it takes to get her somewhere safe. There was a pause. Yes, we'll pay your full fee. Double if necessary. Just please, we need this done by tomorrow morning, before she can do any more damage to herself. He hung up, turned to Sophia. Done. He's filing the petition first thing in the morning. Now what about the money? Sophia's face was cold, calculating. Call the bank. Tell them she's missing and mentally incompetent. Tell them she's probably being taken advantage of by whoever she's with. We need to freeze her accounts before she gives away our inheritance. Our inheritance. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. I watched William dial the bank's emergency line, his hands trembling. Yes, hello. My name is William Foster. I'm calling about my mother's account. Olivia Foster. He rattled off the account number, the one for the decoy account I'd set up specifically for him to find. I need to report an emergency. My mother is mentally unwell. She's had a breakdown. She's missing. He paused, listening. What do you mean you can't discuss the account with me? Another pause. His face went from pale to a sickly green. No, that's not possible. What do you mean she was just there this morning? I smiled. I'd been to the bank at 9 a.m. before any of this started. Had moved every penny from that account into the trust. A trust? William's voice was rising. What trust? Where did the money go? You have to tell me. He listened for another agonizing moment. What do you mean I'm not an authorized party? I'm her son. I'm her only... He stopped. The person on the other end had hung up. William slowly lowered the phone. Didn't hang up. Just let his arm drop to his side. William? Sophia's voice was sharp. William, what is it? He turned to look at her, his eyes dead. She knew, he whispered. Mom knew we were coming. What are you talking about? The bank manager said she was there this morning, before Easter dinner. She moved everything, every asset, into a private trust. The account is empty. There's nothing left. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Sophia started screaming. I watched them fall apart on my monitors. Sophia was pacing, running her hands through her perfect hair until it stood up in wild angles. Thomas Morrison was on his phone, presumably calling his own creditors. Patricia sat on my couch, her face white with shock. And William, my son, just stood in the middle of the room, staring at nothing. They're coming, he finally said, his voice hollow. The people I owe money to. They're not going to wait anymore. They said tonight. Sophia's head snapped toward him. Then we're not waiting either. She's not here. She abandoned the house. We're going in. We're getting in now. Getting in where? Thomas demanded. She has cash in there. Jewelry. Something. Old people always have hiding places. The real bank documents for that trust, they have to be in the house. She wouldn't just leave them. She grabbed William by the shirt. Your key. The one to the front door. You still have it, right? William looked horrified. Sophia, no. That's breaking and entering. That's a felony. "It's not breaking and entering if it's your house," she screamed. "And it will be your house. She's your mother. She's just confused. We're going inside to wait for her, to make sure she's safe. Now open the damn door before I break a window." I sat back in my chair watching my son make his final choice. The boy I'd raised, the man I'd hoped he'd become, the stranger he'd turned into. He pulled the keys from his pocket. "She didn't even change the locks," Sophia muttered, a note of triumphant contempt in her voice. "She is stupid. She is senile. Oh, Sophia, my dear stupid Sophia. I hadn't changed the locks because I wanted them to come back. I needed them to. An assault charge could be argued. It was messy. But felony breaking and entering while I wasn't home with clear intent to steal, that was what we in the business called a clean bust." I turned to Ben. "Call Miller and Walsh. Tell them we have a break-in in progress." Ben was already dialing. On the monitor, I watched William's shaking hand fumble with the key. It took him 3 tries to get the deadbolt to turn. Click. The door swung open. They didn't hesitate. They poured into my foyer like water into a sinking ship. Sophia immediately took charge, her voice a low, urgent hiss. "Okay, here's the plan. William, check the living room. Look for a floor safe. Anything behind the paintings under the rugs. Thomas, Patricia upstairs. Go through everything. The attic, the closets under the mattresses, especially the master bedroom. That's where old people hide their valuables." My blood went cold. The master bedroom. Robert's room. I switched the main monitor to camera 4, the one in the upstairs hallway. I watched Thomas and Patricia Morrison climb my stairs, their faces eager and greedy. They didn't knock. They didn't show an ounce of respect. They shoved open the door to my bedroom, to Robert's sanctuary, and flicked on the lights. I had to watch. I owed it to Robert to witness this desecration. Patricia went straight to Robert's wardrobe. She yanked open the doors and plunged her hands into the neatly folded sweaters, the ones his sister had helped me pack away after the funeral. She pulled them out, sniffed them with disgust, and threw them on the floor. "Nothing, just worthless old man clothes." Thomas was more methodical. He went to Robert's nightstand, the one where he'd kept his reading glasses and the book of poetry I'd given him for our 40th anniversary. Thomas pulled the drawer completely out and dumped its contents onto the carpet. Loose change. A dried rose from our garden. A bottle of pills from Robert's last hospitalization. "Just junk," Thomas growled. "Check under the mattress." I had to watch as this stranger put his hands on the bed where my husband had died, where I'd held him while he took his last breath and told me he'd loved me since the day we met. They grunted as they lifted the heavy mattress, tilting it on its side. Nothing. Just a box spring. "Where does she keep it?" Patricia shrieked. They tore through Robert's study next. Through his workshop, through every sacred space where his memory lived. And downstairs in my office, Sophia was on her hands and knees in front of the wall safe, the decoy safe I'd told William about 10 years ago, just to see if he'd ever try to access it. "Think, William," she was shrieking. "What's the code? Her anniversary, her birthday. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. Try Robert's birthday. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. You useless idiot," she screamed, crying now. Not tears of sadness. Tears of pure, greedy frustration. "It's all in there and we can't get to it. He's won. That old fool has won." I looked at Ben. "How far out are the police?" 5 minutes. I leaned forward to the microphone on the console, the one connected to the intercom system throughout the house. It was time. I pressed the button and my voice filled every room of my home. "It's Robert's birthday, Sophia. August 14th. The code is 0814, the day you never bothered to remember." The reaction was instantaneous. Sophia froze. Her head snapped up. William stopped breathing. Upstairs, I heard Patricia scream. Thomas dropped the box he was holding. "Who's there?" Sophia shrieked, scrambling backward. "Who said that?" "It's the intercom, you idiot," William whispered, his voice trembling. It's Mom. She's watching us." "Where?" Sophia was spinning in circles, looking at the ceiling, the walls. "Where is she?" "Good question, Sophia." My voice echoed through the house. "Where am I? Where have I been this whole time you've been tearing apart my husband's memory?" Thomas came thundering down the stairs. "She's in the walls. It's a trap. This whole thing is a trap." "It was always a trap, Thomas," I said calmly, "from the moment you accepted my Easter invitation." I watched them all bolt, converging on the front door like panicked rats. William grabbed the deadbolt, twisted it. It didn't budge. He twisted again. Click, click, click. Nothing. "It's stuck," he yelled, rattling the handle. "The door won't open." "That's because it's not stuck, William." My voice was everywhere, inescapable. "It's a magnetic lock, electronic, tied directly to the security system, and I just activated it remotely." I paused, watching them claw at the door like animals. "You're not going anywhere." On the monitor, I could see the sheer terror on their faces. They were trapped, caught in my maze. And outside, I could see the red and blue lights of police cruisers pulling up to my house. I looked at Ben. "Shall we?" He nodded, picking up his briefcase. I pressed another button on the security panel. In my office, the one they'd just torn apart a section of the bookcase swung open with a pneumatic hiss. The hidden door. The one Robert had built 30 years ago when he was going through his spy novel phase. The one that led to a reinforced reading room where I'd been sitting for the last hour, watching everything. "Time to make an appearance," I said. We stepped through the hidden door and into my office. The four of them were huddled by the front door when we emerged. They spun around at the sound of the bookcase moving, their faces frozen in shock. William made a small choking sound. "Mom, you were here the whole time." Behind me, Ben Carter stepped out, his briefcase in hand. And behind Ben, Detective Miller and Detective Walsh appeared, their badges clearly visible. "Hello, family," I said calmly. I let them see me. The stitches on my face, the bruises already forming, the blood still staining my dress. "The 4 seasons," I smiled slightly. "That was just a reservation, William. A digital breadcrumb for you to follow, to make you think I was running scared." I took a step closer. They all flinched backward. "I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. Right here. In Robert's reading room, the one you all thought was just a closet. I needed you to cross this threshold. I needed you to commit a felony. On camera." I gestured to the small red lights in the corners. "And you did. Magnificently." Thomas Morrison puffed up his chest, trying for authority. "Now hold on. We're family. We were worried about you. We came to check on you." "With your hands in my dead husband's belongings," Detective Walsh said, stepping forward. "Is that why my colleague found these in your wife's pocket, Mr. Morrison?" She held up an evidence bag. Inside were Robert's mother's pearl earrings, the ones that had been in my jewelry box upstairs. Patricia let out a squeak. "You were worried," Miller said, his voice like gravel. "So you decided to help yourselves to the family heirlooms. And you, sir?" He looked at Thomas. "Were you worried when you were trying to pry the backing off the paintings in the master bedroom?" Ben Carter stepped forward, pulling out a thick legal document. "William Foster, Sophia Foster, Thomas Morrison, Patricia Morrison." His voice was the one he used in courtrooms, the voice of inevitable consequence. "You are all under arrest for felony breaking and entering, attempted grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Fraud?" Sophia shrieked. "You can't prove that we were just—" "Sophia," I interrupted quietly. "We have you on audio, 6 months of recordings, planning to have me declared incompetent, arranging for Dr. Pierce to give a fraudulent medical certification, and tonight lying to police officers about my assault." I pointed to my stitches. "And this assault with a deadly weapon, for which you will face additional charges." Sophia looked at my face, at the stitches, at the detectives, and finally she understood. She'd never been in control. She was just an amateur who'd walked straight into a trap set by a professional. Her knees buckled. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Detective Miller pulled out handcuffs. "William Foster, you are under arrest. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." The sound of the metal, that sharp, cold click, finally broke my son. His knees gave out. He collapsed, folding in on himself by the front door. "No, no, no, please." The sound was raw animal, pure terror. "Please, you don't understand." "You can tell us downtown, sir," Walsh said, pulling Sophia's hands behind her back. "You don't understand," William screamed. His voice cracked. "I owe money, a lot of money, $250,000, to people from Miami, people who aren't bankers. They're going to kill me. They told me I had until Friday." He was sobbing now, snot and tears running down his face. "This wasn't about greed. This was about my life. I had to get the money. Don't you see I had to—" Sophia, being handcuffed by Walsh, stared at him in shock. "You what?" Miller pulled William to his feet. Sir, we can discuss your situation at the station. Please. William was looking at Miller like he was God. You have to protect me. If you send me to jail, they'll find me. They'll kill me. I had been silent this whole time, just watching the final pathetic unraveling of my son. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. No, William, I said quietly. The room went still. Everyone turned to look at me. They're not going to kill you, I said. William's head snapped up, his tear-filled eyes meeting mine. What did you say? I said they're not going to kill you. The men from Miami, your loan sharks, your $250,000 problem. I paused, letting the weight of what I was about to say settle in the air. It's gone. Gone? His voice was barely a whisper. I looked at my son, this stranger in handcuffs, and delivered the final blow. I paid it, William. All of it. $250,000. 1 month ago, anonymously. Your debt was cleared before you ever came to my house tonight. The color didn't just drain from William's face. It was like his entire soul had been vacuumed out of his body. He stopped trembling, stopped breathing, just stood there in handcuffs, paralyzed, a hollow shell of a man. The detectives paused, sensing this was something more than a simple arrest. Something deeper, something that cut to the bone. Sophia let out a strangled gasp. You already paid it a month ago? Yes. I never took my eyes off William. I did. I've known about his gambling debt for 6 months, Sophia. Known about your embezzlement. Known about your parents' fraudulent bankruptcy. I've known everything. William's eyes were searching mine, desperate for an answer he couldn't grasp. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. But, he finally managed to whisper, but if you paid it, why all of this? The question hung in the air like smoke. I stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see every stitch in my cheek, every bruise forming on my face, close enough that he could see the tears I'd been holding back for the last hour. Because I was testing you, son. My voice cracked on that last word. Son. A word that used to mean everything, that now felt like ashes in my mouth. I gave you a clean slate, William. I wiped away your biggest, most terrifying problem. I gave you your life back free and clear. I could see the dawning horror in his eyes, the catastrophic understanding of what I was saying. I wanted to see what kind of man you really were. I continued, my voice thick with emotion I could no longer contain. Would you come to me? Confess what you'd done? Ask for help to rebuild your life, to be a better man. I paused, feeling Robert's absence like a physical wound. He should have been here for this. He should have been the one to save our son. But he was gone, and I'd had to do this alone. I gave you a miracle, William. My voice was barely above a whisper now. I gave you a second chance, a way out, freedom. I pointed to my stitched, bloodied face. And what did you do with it? You chose this. You chose her. I glanced at Sophia. You chose to break into my home, to destroy your father's memory, to assault me for money you didn't even need anymore. William's face crumpled. The understanding hit him like a freight train. It wasn't about money. It had never been about money. It was about who he was, what he'd become. And he had failed the test in the most spectacular, damning way possible. Mom, he choked out. Mom, I didn't know. That's exactly the point, William. I stepped back, putting distance between us. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't confess. You didn't trust me. You saw a clean slate, and instead of gratitude, instead of relief, instead of taking it as a sign to change your life, you saw it as an opportunity to take more. Tears were streaming down my face now. I didn't try to stop them. You saw your mother as a resource to be exploited, a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. I didn't mean... William's voice broke. Mom, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry. The word came out harsh. You watched your wife throw a glass at my face, William. You watched me bleed. And you did nothing. You said nothing. You just stood there and called me selfish. My voice rose, all the pain and betrayal of the last 6 months, the last 3 years of loneliness without Robert coming out in a torrent. I lost your father 3 years ago, William. I've been alone in that house, surrounded by his memory, trying to hold on to the life we built. And when I needed you most, when I gave you every opportunity to be the man your father raised you to be, You chose greed over family. You chose her over me. I turned to Detective Miller. My voice was steady now, cold, final. Get him out of my house. William's legs gave out. Miller had to hold him up as he tried to process what had just happened. It wasn't just an arrest. It was the complete annihilation of his self-image. The destruction of any illusion he'd been holding on to that he was a good person in a bad situation. Mom, please, he was sobbing. Please, I'll fix this. I'll make it right. Just please. There's nothing to fix, William. I was so tired. So impossibly tired. The debt is paid. The house will never be yours. And I don't have a son anymore. Those last words almost killed me to say, but they were true. The boy I'd raised, the one who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them sunshine flowers, the one who'd cried at his father's funeral and told me we'd get through it together. That boy was gone. This man in handcuffs was a stranger. Sophia, however, was not broken. Not yet. She was made of something different, something harder and sharper and meaner than William could ever be. As Walsh tightened the handcuffs, Sophia's mind was still working. I could see her eyes darting around, searching for one last play, one last card to throw down. And then she found it. She stopped struggling. She looked at me and a slow, ugly smile spread across her face. You think you're so smart, don't you? Her voice was low, vicious. You think you've won? I didn't answer, just watched her. You paid his debt. So what? She was gaining confidence now, feeding off her own desperation. You can't kick us out. You can't take everything away. William is your son, your only blood. He has rights. She gestured with her cuffed hands toward the house itself. This house, this property. William is your heir. He has legal rights. You can't just disinherit him. William, hearing his name, looked up with a pathetic flicker of hope. Mom, the house. She's right. I'm your son. Under California law, I have rights. Sophia's voice was getting louder, more confident. We'll see you in court, Olivia. We'll sue for it. We'll tie you up in litigation until you're dead. A son has a right to his parents' property. We'll take this house and we'll sell it, and you'll have nothing. She was screaming now, her voice echoing through the foyer. It's ours. It should have been ours from the beginning. That's when Ben Carter stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and spoke with the calm, cold precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Actually, Mrs. Foster, he said, his voice cutting through her hysteria like a knife through silk, he doesn't. Sophia froze. What? He has no rights. Ben opened his briefcase with practiced ease. Legally speaking, William Foster has about as much claim to this property as I do, which is to say none at all. What are you talking about? Sophia's voice was shrill now, desperate. He's her son. He's her only child. He was my son, I said quietly. But he made a choice 5 years ago. I walked past the detectives, past my handcuffed family. I went to my office, the one they'd just torn apart, looking for money that was never there. I approached the wall safe, the one Sophia had been trying to crack. With steady hands, I entered the code. Not William's birthday, not our anniversary. F-14, Robert's birthday. The safe beeped. The heavy steel door swung open. Sophia and Thomas gasped, their eyes going wide. They thought it was full of gold. Cash. Bearer bonds. I reached inside and pulled out a single leather-bound document. This house, I said, holding it up for all of them to see, has not legally belonged to me for 5 years. I opened the document to the first page. The title was embossed in gold lettering, The Robert Foster Memorial Trust. 5 years ago. I began, my voice steady despite the tears still on my cheeks. When Robert was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, we sat in this very office and made a plan. I looked at William. He was staring at the document like it was a snake. Your father knew he was dying, and he knew we both knew that you were struggling, William. The failed business ventures, the gambling that was just starting, the way Sophia looked at our home like it was a prize to be won. Sophia's face was white. You can't do this. That's not legal. You can't just... It's completely legal, Ben interjected. I should know. I drafted it. He pulled out his own copy of the document and began reading in his courtroom voice. The Robert Foster Memorial Trust. Established January 15th, 5 years ago. Irrevocable trust. Primary beneficiary, Olivia Catherine Foster. Secondary beneficiaries, to be designated by the primary beneficiary at time of death. Trustees Benjamin Carter Esquire and Olivia Foster. He looked up at William. All assets, including this house, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and personal property were transferred into the trust upon Robert Foster's death 3 years ago. Mrs. Olivia Foster has lifetime tenancy and full control, but she does not own these assets. The trust does. That's not possible, William whispered. You always said the house was mine, that I'd inherit. I said the house would be yours if you proved yourself worthy of it, I corrected him. If you became the man your father and I raised you to be. If you showed respect, responsibility, and love. I closed the document and held it against my chest. This house was your father's dream, William. He spent 40 years of his life restoring it, making it beautiful, filling it with memories, and before he died, he made me promise something. My voice broke. I had to pause, take a breath, remember Robert's hand in mine during those final days. He made me promise that this house would never fall into the wrong hands, that it would never be sold for profit, that it would never belong to someone who saw it as just wood and dollar signs. I looked at Sophia, at her designer dress, at her fake diamonds, at the greed that had consumed her so completely that she'd thrown a glass at an old woman's face. He made me create this trust to protect his legacy, and to test you, William, to see if you deserve to be part of that legacy. A test, William repeated numbly. This was all a test. Everything was a test, I said. When your father died and left you nothing in his will, that was the first test. Would you come to me with grief and love, or would you come with your hand out? William's face showed he remembered. He'd come to the funeral, stayed for an hour, and left without saying goodbye. 2 weeks later, he'd called asking about Robert's life insurance. When you started gambling again last year, that was another test. Would you come to me for help, or would you hide it and let it spiral? I counted on my fingers. When you married Sophia and she started talking about updating this house, modernizing it, selling Robert's antiques, that was a test. Each word was a nail in the coffin of our relationship. And when I paid off your debt a month ago, that was the final test, the biggest one. Would you see it as a miracle and change your life? Or would you see it as a sign of weakness and come for more? I spread my hands. You failed every single one, William. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the detectives seemed reluctant to break it. Sophia was the first to recover, because Sophia never knew when to stop. This is elder abuse, she hissed. You're manipulating him. You're punishing him for having a life of his own, for choosing me over you. Choosing you. I almost laughed. Sophia, he didn't choose you. He chose the easiest path, the path of least resistance. He chose someone who would tell him what he wanted to hear instead of what he needed to hear. I turned to Detective Miller. Can we finish this? I'm very tired. Miller nodded. William Foster, you have the right to remain silent. As he read William his Miranda rights, I watched my son's face, watched the last pieces of his denial crumble away. He wasn't crying anymore. He was just empty. The house was never yours to inherit, William, I said quietly, one last truth to drive home. It belongs to the trust. And the trust's secondary beneficiaries, the ones who will inherit after I'm gone, are the Eastside Women's Shelter, the Robert Foster Memorial Scholarship Fund, and the Pacific Coast Alzheimer's Research Foundation. Sophia let out a sound like a wounded animal. Your father wanted his legacy to help people, I continued, to make a difference, not to be sold off piece by people who never appreciated it. But I'm your son, William said. His voice was small, broken. I'm your only child. You were, I said. But you stopped being my son the moment you watched Sophia throw that glass and did nothing. Detective Walsh led Sophia toward the door. The magnetic lock had been disengaged and cool night air flowed into the foyer. Sophia was still fighting, still screaming. This isn't over. We'll appeal. We'll sue. We'll get lawyers who... Mrs. Foster, Ben said calmly, you're going to need those lawyers for your embezzlement trial and your assault trial. I'd suggest you save your money. She tried to lunge at me, but Walsh held her firm. You bitter old bitch! You're doing this because you're jealous, because you're alone, because Robert left you and you can't stand that. William chose me. Robert didn't leave me, Sophia. My voice was ice. He died. There's a difference. He loved me until his last breath. Can you say the same about William? I looked at my son. Can he say the same about you? William was being led toward the door by Miller. His face was streaked with tears and shame. Mom, he said one last desperate attempt. Please, I know I messed up. I know I did everything wrong. But please, don't do this. I'm begging you. I wanted to fold. Every maternal instinct in my body wanted to run to him, hold him, tell him it would be okay. But I thought of Robert, of the promises I'd made, of the life we'd built in this house. I gave you every chance, William. My voice was steady, but tears were falling freely now. I paid your debt. I tested you fairly. I waited for you to choose right over wrong, and you chose wrong, every single time. I'll change, he pleaded. I'll go to rehab. I'll leave Sophia. I'll be better. Just please. It's too late for promises, William. I wiped my eyes. The time for promises was when your father was dying and asked if you'd take care of me. Do you remember what you said? His face showed he did. You said, of course. You promised him you'd look after me, make sure I was never alone, never afraid. I touched my stitches. How did that promise work out? William had no answer. What answer could there be? Miller guided him gently toward the door. Come on, son. Let's go. As they reached the threshold, William looked back one more time. I love you, Mom. The words should have meant something, should have carried weight, but they were empty, hollow, years too late. I love you too, William, I said, because it was true. I did love him. I would always love the boy he'd been. But love isn't enough. Not anymore. The door closed behind them. The sound of it, that final heavy thud, echoed through the empty house. For a long moment I just stood there in my foyer, in the home Robert and I had built, surrounded by 43 years of memories. The grandfather clock ticked. The house settled. Everything was exactly as it had been. Except now, I was truly alone. Ben put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Olivia, let me drive you to a hotel. You shouldn't be here tonight. I shook my head. This is my home, Ben. I'm not running from it. After everything that just happened, I interrupted. I need to be here, with Robert, with our memories. Ben studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. I'll have someone come clean up the dining room. The blood, the broken glass, no. My voice was firm. I'll do it. Tomorrow. Tonight I just need... I didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Call me if you need anything, Ben said. He squeezed my shoulder once more, then left, closing the door quietly behind him. And then there was silence. Complete, absolute silence. I walked through my house, turning on lights as I went. The living room where Robert and I used to read together. The kitchen where he'd burned more meals than he'd successfully cooked. The stairs we'd climbed together for 40 years. I stopped at the master bedroom door. Robert's room. Our room. I pushed it open and stood in the doorway. Patricia Morrison had torn through here like a hurricane. Robert's sweaters were on the floor. His nightstand had been ransacked. The mattress was askew. I walked slowly to the bed and began putting it right. I folded each sweater carefully the way Robert liked them. I put his reading glasses back on the nightstand. I straightened the mattress. And then I sat on the edge of our bed, and let myself break. The sobs came from somewhere deep, somewhere I'd been keeping locked away for 3 years. I lost him, Robert, I whispered to the empty room. I lost our boy. He's really gone. I lay down on Robert's side of the bed, curled around his pillow that still somehow smelled like him. I did what you asked. I protected the house. I tested William. I gave him every chance. Tears soaked into the pillowcase. But I lost him anyway, and I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't know if you'd be proud of me or disappointed. I don't know anything anymore except that I'm alone and our son is gone and I can't fix it. The house was silent. No answers came. I don't know how long I lay there. Minutes, hours. Time felt meaningless. Eventually I got up, washed my face, looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. 70 years old. Stitches in my face, bruises forming, alone in a big house, but not defeated, never defeated. 3 weeks later, the charges had been filed. William, Sophia, Thomas, and Patricia were all out on bail awaiting trial. Sophia was facing assault charges and embezzlement charges. Her employer had fired her immediately after her arrest made the news. William was charged with breaking and entering conspiracy and filing a false police report. His public defender had advised him to take a plea deal. Thomas and Patricia Morrison were wanted in Florida for fraud. Extradition was pending. And me, I was sitting in my garden on a Sunday morning tending Robert's roses. My phone rang. Ben's name appeared on the screen. "Good morning, Ben." "Morning, Olivia. I have news." I set down my pruning shears. "Good news or bad news?" "Depends on your perspective. William's lawyer called. He wants to talk. William wants to apologize. To you, in person." My hand tightened on the phone. "No. Olivia, no, Ben. I meant what I said. It's too late for apologies." There was a pause. "He's still your son. Is he?" I looked at the roses, their blooms heavy and perfect in the morning sun. The son I raised would never have done what he did. That boy is gone, Ben. Maybe he's been gone for years and I just didn't want to see it. What do you want me to tell his lawyer? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Tell him I hope William gets the help he needs. I hope he finds a way to become a better man. But he needs to do that without me. I can't save him. I can't fix him. Only he can do that. And if he does, if he gets clean changes, his life becomes that better man. I smiled sadly. Then I'll be happy for him. From a distance. Olivia. I'm 70 years old, Ben. I don't have time for false hope anymore. I gave William every chance, every test, every opportunity. He made his choices. Now he has to live with them. I hung up and sat in silence for a moment. Then I went back to my roses. A month after that, I was in the kitchen making Robert's apple pie, the one with the lattice crust he'd loved so much. The house was quiet, clean. The bloodstains had been professionally removed from the dining room floor. The broken crystal had been swept away. Everything was exactly as it should be. Except I was alone. I had thought about selling the house, moving into something smaller, easier to maintain. But every time I considered it, I'd remember Robert's face the first time we'd walked through this place. How his eyes had lit up. How he'd said, "This is it, Liv. This is our forever home." He'd been right. This was my forever home. And I wasn't leaving it. I heard a knock at the door. For a moment my heart jumped. Hoped. Maybe it was William. Maybe I pushed the thought away before it could fully form. I opened the door. It was Ben Carter holding a file folder and wearing a smile. "Olivia, may I come in?" "Of course." I led him to the kitchen. "I'm making pie, Robert's favorite." I remember. Ben sat at the kitchen table. "That's actually why I'm here." He opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. It was of a young woman, maybe 30 years old, with kind eyes and Robert's smile. "Who is this?" I asked. "Her name is Jennifer Torres. She's a single mother working 2 jobs trying to put herself through nursing school." Ben's smile widened. "She applied for the Robert Foster Memorial Scholarship. Full ride, 4 years. I looked at the photo, at this young woman who reminded me so much of myself at that age. Determined, strong, fighting for a better life. She wrote in her essay that her father died when she was young, that she wants to be a nurse because she remembers the nurses who took care of him, who made his final days peaceful. My eyes filled with tears. That's beautiful, Ben. The scholarship board approved her yesterday. You're funding her entire education, Olivia. You and Robert. I traced my finger over the photograph. This was what Robert had wanted. His legacy helping people, making a difference, not sold off piece by piece, not turned into cash for people who didn't appreciate it. This. Tell her yes, I said. Tell her Robert would have been proud to help her. Ben nodded, taking the photo back. There's more. The East Side Women's Shelter used their portion of the trust to expand. They're adding a new wing. They want to name it after you. After Robert, I corrected. Everything should be named after Robert. They want to call it the Olivia and Robert Foster Family Wing. I couldn't speak, could only nod. You did good, Olivia, Ben said quietly. With all of it. The trust, the house. Even with William, you gave him every chance. More than most people would have. I lost my son, Ben. No. Ben's voice was firm. You lost the idea of who you hoped he'd be. But the real William, the man he actually is, he was never yours to lose. He made his own choices. We sat in silence for a moment, the smell of baking apples filling the kitchen. "Will you stay for pie?" I asked. Ben smiled. "I'd be honored." 6 months later, I was standing in Robert's garden on what would have been our 53rd wedding anniversary. The roses were in full bloom. The ones he'd planted were thriving, spreading, creating new life. I was wearing his old cardigan, the one I'd kept, even though it was too big and starting to unravel at the cuffs. "We did it, Robert," I said to the flowers. "We protected the house. We made sure your legacy lived on." The garden was peaceful, quiet. I saw Jennifer last week, the scholarship recipient. She sent me a photo of her first day of nursing school. "She's brilliant, Robert. You would have loved her." A breeze rustled through the roses, and for just a moment I could have sworn I smelled Robert's cologne. "William wrote me a letter," I continued. "From jail. He's in a diversion program. Rehab. Therapy. He says he's sorry. Says he understands now what he did wrong." I knelt down, pulling a few weeds from around the roses. I didn't write back. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. I don't know yet. I sat back on my heels, looking at the house. Our house. "I'm okay, though. I want you to know that. I'm lonely sometimes. I miss you every single day. But I'm okay." The sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the garden. "The house is safe. The trust is working exactly like you planned. Your memory is helping people. And I'm still here. Still fighting. Still loving you." I stood up slowly, my knees protesting. "Happy anniversary, my love." I walked back to the house, our house, as the last light faded from the sky. Inside, the grandfather clock was ticking, the same rhythm it had kept for 43 years. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in Robert's chair in the office. On the desk was the photo from our 30th anniversary. Both of us smiling, both of us happy. I raised my glass to the photo. "To us, Robert. To the life we built. To the legacy we left. And to the truth that some things, some houses, some memories, some loves are worth fighting for." I took a sip and smiled. Outside, the wind chimed through the garden. And in that moment, in that house full of memories, I wasn't alone. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Home.